southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.
What's going on, guys? Tristan and Tony with the Zero Duck 30 podcast back here with another episode. What's going on, Tony?
Hey, you know what? It's podcast time.
So today we got on Dr. Bradley Cohen. If you guys remember, I don't know, it might have been 10, 15 episodes ago. We had Dr. Brad on and got into a lot of great scientific stuff. And being that's later in duck season, we wanted to get him back on here and to see if some new data came out and all that good stuff. So thank you for taking the time. Brad, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you didn't get to listen to the podcast before when we had Brad on, I definitely urge you to go back and listen to that, because I think it'll help you get into like the real in-depth parts of what they truly do. And we're just not going to cover that tonight. I think that episode really drilled down. I mean, I even got into some words I didn't even know how to say. So
yeah, that was a pretty heavy one.
But Brad, just for people that haven't listened before, would you please introduce yourself professionally and personally? Talk about what you like to do and stuff.
Sure. So I'm a professor of wildlife ecology at Tennessee Tech University, which is about an hour east of Nashville, Tennessee. Most of my research focuses on applied game animal ecology. So another way to put that is my research focuses on how we manage wildlife populations and habitat for species that are harvested. And long story short, I got into this because I love hunting and fishing. I mean, long story short was that I didn't realize at the time that I'd be busiest during hunting season, but I absolutely love hunting. And so I was like, oh, that's a great career to go into. I'll just research all the animals I like to kill. And then now I'm busiest during hunting season. You know, probably should have studied like songbirds or something like that. But, you know, I still every day I go to work and I don't feel like I'm really working. So it's a good trade-off.
Do you think sometimes, Brad, when someone like yourself is, I'm thinking about my wife, she's a nurse practitioner, you know, and you know, like a symptom comes up, you know, and she's over there, blah, 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 you know, drilling down on it. And I'm like, sometimes you can know too much. Is that kind of roll into your experience with your professional life and your hunting career?
Yeah. So yeah, I originally did a lot of research with white-tailed deer, and I was a big deer hunter. I've always been a huge duck hunter, but I love deer hunting. And it definitely, after like, you know, 10, 15 years of researching white-tailed deer, they start to lose their shine. And, you know, I was never a really good turkey hunter. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm just going to switch over to doing turkey research. You know, like if I had to lose one, I love turkey hunting. It's the best thing in the spring. But if I have to lose one where like, I don't kill many turkeys anyway, so it's not a big loss. You know, but like ducks are just too cool. Like no matter how much research I do on them, I don't see that shine wearing off.
That's awesome, man. Well, you were asking us off air kind of how our duck season was going, but we didn't get into how your duck season's been going. Have you been able to get out and do some duck hunting this year?
Yeah. I've done a good bit of duck hunting. It's been hit or miss. Hit or miss is the best way of putting it. You know, we had that cold weather in December, and I think everyone had some pretty good weeks around there.
Yep.
And then I don't know, like for me, on some good weather fronts, I've had some good hunting. Otherwise, it's been slow, picking up a couple here or there, you know, nothing crazy. Did you guys have something better than average or worse than average?
It was just up and down.
Up and down.
Yes,
I mean, not a lot of big ducks.
Yeah. I mean, opening weekend,
Really?
Opening weekend blew our mind, quite honestly. We didn't even raise our guns, and we saw less than, and we're in Northeast Arkansas, so we saw less than, the whole weekend, we saw less than 300 birds.
Probably.
And that's counting like as high as the sky you could see. And now on the geese, on the other hand, that was a little bit different story. But yeah, they just weren't there and weren't flying, you know? I mean, it's just bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah. Even as recent as last weekend, it was still just predominantly teal and, you know, smaller ducks. I mean, you know, you would shoot some other species of big ducks, but like the big pushes like mallards, they weren't really there. I mean, there's a lot of pintails.
Yeah.
But
yeah, tons of pintails.
Wow. Yeah. Well, pintails last year too, there was a ton of pintails. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember what the current numbers are for them, but it seems like they're doing pretty good, at least where we are.
That's what our buddy is like, man, they need to make the limit of them 4 because you see so many of them. And I was telling him, I think it's because, and you'll probably have a good input on this, Brad, but I think it's because of how finicky they are about laying their eggs and how hard they are. Like that end of it. Yeah.
They get up to the prairie potholes so early. They farmers tend to run over their nest because they nest so early. But yeah, but I'll be honest, you could set the limit at 6 and I still wouldn't probably shoot them there. I see a flock of 50 and here they come and, they work and then they peel off to like 20, 10, 1. And then, it's like a 60-yard shot if you want to take it with that one single. So like, I don't know if it's like that for you guys, but like, it doesn't matter what the limit is. I can't really get them consistently anyway, no matter how many I see.
On Sunday, this past Sunday, we hunted all day
It's
long.
so funny that you bring this up, Brad.
So we hunted 2 different fields, and the first field, like there was like 6 of us. We shot like 7 birds. Went over this other field for the evening, and the pintails all day long at both fields would do exactly like you said. And like with 2 minutes of shooting light left, we shot a pintail and a gadwall, and I was like, I jumped out of the blind with excitement.
It was like a rocket exploded right out of his behind. Yeah. He jumped right out of that thing. He's like, a pintail!
I know like, yeah.
I don't know why they do, and it seems like the other one that does that a lot it's like spoonies will either be like, I love what you got, and here I am. And outside of that, most of the time, my experience with spoonies has been the same thing. You think you need one more pass, and they go, nah, and elevate, and there they go, start elevating, and you're like, my goodness, But hey, we did take some good 60, 75-yard high shots at some pintails this weekend. I'll tell you that, because we got frustrated. And I said, let it rip, Tater Chip, and we bring a boom, 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 and just, and I think all of us knew that if we got lucky with one pellet hitting one of them, we'd be lucky.
Yeah.
I know. They're frustrating duck for sure.
Oh, man. But, yeah, no, that's the way the duck season's been for us. It's just been up and down. I went out there the following weekend and was part of a 3-man limit, a 4-man limit, and a 6-man limit, back to back to back. And you just never know, And our buddy Cade, over there, he's got a lot of property to go from, and he just one area might be super hot that day, and ducks are ducks,
For sure.
Yeah, I know it.
But man, so Brad, do me a favor and just give us a 60-second commercial on what is Cohen Wildlife Lab and what is you guys' focus there?
So it's basically my research lab. Right now we have I think 10 graduate students or 9 graduate students and a postdoc, and we research everything from we put a lot of GPS units on animals, so like turkeys and ducks, and then we also do a little bit of white-tailed deer stuff. And the end goal is we're working with state and federal agencies, and we're coming up with habitat and management prescriptions, whether it's like harvest frameworks or something like that, to optimize wildlife populations. Now that's the word optimize is kind of a weird word, but it's both like keep those populations high and sustainable, but also make sure that hunters, are getting the experience that they want. So we kind of are like wildlife researchers, but also very cognizant of the experience that game animals or all animals can provide. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great overview. And like I said before, you guys, if you really want to dive down into some of this stuff, I mean, they get into doing, was it with the ARUs?
Oh yeah. We do we do all kinds of different stuff. Like, we don't just like put GPS transmitters on ducks. Instead, we put GPS transmitters on ducks, and then we disturb refuges with those GPS transmitter ducks there. And then we monitor how many shotgun blasts happen on those days versus days where we don't disturb. And those shotgun blasts are recorded with just a recording unit that's kind of just passively listening. And we find stuff like, every time we disturb a refuge, the daily shots actually decrease by 50%, which you wouldn't expect, right? But those ducks, our movement basically shows that those ducks get up, fly around scared to shit, and then land back down and hunker down. So
so you guys, I'm sorry, Tristan.
Oh, I was just gonna say that what you just said, Brad, was basically out of our last podcast, it has been like probably the biggest thing that's stuck with me and my favorite thing to bring up if I get talking with people, and this podcast, when we had you on, comes up. I love to bring that up. It's just so interesting.
It is. And the other thing that we bring up a lot, and people will be like, "Oh, we're migrating ducks." I said, wait a minute. I know somebody's studying that stuff, and just because of the altitude doesn't mean that they're migrating ducks.
Oh,
altogether.
sure. Yeah. I mean, the only time any hunter really knows when there's migrating ducks, because those are the special days. Those are the days when you can call them out of the sky because they don't know where to go or what they're doing. Those are the migrators, and I mean, if you look at our data, we see that generally like there's 2 pushes of migration. That's it. Like, yeah, sure. There's always a constant trickle here and there, but there's only really 2 good pushes of migration. One actually before hunting season begins, and then one around like late December and early January. That's it.
Well, here's a good little lead in to push off to the next topic. Is if you're listening to this podcast and we tell you that Brad actually told us on the last podcast that once they get down here, most ducks, I think you said, stay within a 4 square mile radius or something like that. What do I have that number?
Okay. All right. So let me. Yeah. So they basically stay within a 4 mile radius. That's exactly right. Of a refuge.
Of a refuge, yeah. So
at least in Tennessee. Now listen, that is being found in other states too. But you got to keep in mind where I am, where I'm doing this study. Like, there's a lot of food around, so they don't have to fly like super far. Right. But yeah, within 4 miles.
Right. Well, and I would have to bet the same when you're talking about going to the rice capital of the world as a duck, that there's plenty of food. It's just where they want to be that day. And there's a consistent trend with some of that stuff. And so the whole point here is folks, is that really go back and listen to that podcast. It's something awesome. I learned a lot from it. I know Tristan did, and good stuff. So let's get an update on the past few months and go over some of the data that you've been processing as far as the migration this year. I know we'll get into this a little bit later, but you posted about some really crazy numbers from this one mallard that you guys had tracked, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what's some of the stuff that you guys have been processing since we've had you on, since the migration started?
Yeah, so since October, we put out a couple.
As waterfowlers, we experience all kinds of extreme weather conditions. Stay bone dry and warm with Frog Togs hunting gear. You can check them out at frogtogs.com or at frogtogshunt on Instagram.
100 more transmitters, and watched a couple hundred more ducks also migrate down. And basically, it started off, I think I told you this, but like in most of the ducks we capture, I would say about 50%, give or take. Don't ask me the exact number. We're actually working on it now. But those ducks, when we tag them in the winter in Tennessee, they fly back up north. They go back to where they're going to winter around November, the first week of November. They don't stop. They just fly down. So about 50% of our ducks were already here by November 15th. So all that cold stuff and all that was happening up north didn't really affect them. And then we watched them kind of trickle down. Once that cold front hit in December, by that time, about 75% of our ducks were already where they were going to go. And we did see, like, you remember that freezing cold weather, right?
Sure, that double polar push or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I mean, ducks, now listen, here's the thing. Let me tell you something. So I would have thought our ducks would have pushed out of the area or pushed further down, and some certainly did. Like some of our ducks, like, that were already from last year, the year before, and were like a little above Tennessee, they flew down to Tennessee. But only of the ones we were monitoring, like less than 10% still went further south than Tennessee. Now that we keep in mind, that's where that's where we actually like tag them, right? So like my buddy Paul Link in Louisiana, he tags his ducks in Louisiana. They come back to Louisiana. Like, this isn't some short stopping thing. This is just, these ducks don't want to go any further than where they're used to. But like, I couldn't believe it. We put a drone up in the air, so we're doing some drone survey work now. And dude, there was like 100,000 ducks in like one area, and they're just sitting there, even in that super cold water, and it's super cold weather, they're keeping pockets open. This wasn't some kind of like ice eater thing.
Right.
There's 100,000 ducks just literally keeping water open on top of each other. And so none of our ducks really left Tennessee even when that happened.
Wow.
Not to get off track with that, but did you happen to notice was there some eagle and hawk dive bombing going on that stuff?
Oh, hell. Oh, of course. Of course. Yeah, but like that's happening 24/7 at these refuges. Like these eagles eat well. Like,
well, they're our best friends.
They're not dive bombing a lot of you watch them, you can see every once in a while, like they'll take a duck and it's like that duck probably was a cripple of some sort, they're going after specific ones because otherwise,
it's like any predator.
It's just a constant thing. But yeah, it's been. Oh, I will say though. So okay, this is the important part. So even though our ducks didn't leave Tennessee, the ones we tagged got absolutely hammered by hunters. So here's another thing that I've been thinking about, with this quote unquote, you mentioned like, are those migrators or not? It doesn't matter really if they're migrators, right? Mm-hmm. Something like that ice, that cold weather, everyone's like, oh, we're shooting fresh migrators coming down. No, you're just shooting ducks that are no longer able to go where they're used to going.
True. Fair enough.
They're going to a new environment.
True.
That's
Fair enough.
You know what I'm saying? So our ducks were getting hammered, but it's because instead of going to Joe's cornfield that they go to every day, that's locked up. So they got to find something different, and that's when they were getting killed.
One thing that kind of just spurred, and I don't think we brought this up last time, but you'll talk to guys in our state of Georgia that we shoot mallards up in northwest Georgia and stuff like that. And I'm just curious, Brad, like I read on the DNR's website for Georgia that there's no migratory mallards to the state, but have you guys ever had one dip into Georgia that you had a transmitter on?
No, we haven't had any that have even crossed into the Atlantic Flyway at all.
Okay.
So like there's definitely, I won't speak too much, but I would be surprised if there aren't at least some migrators down there, but you're dealing with probably short distance migrators that are probably from like, nesting in New Jersey, New York.
I see.
Stuff like that. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Gotcha. Now we're spinning out of control here. So this is a cool one, and I hadn't even thought about this until now because I was mind blown early on that this even happened. Most duck hunters, I don't think, realize that wood ducks migrate. I mean, there's definitely your local wood ducks, right?
Yes.
But there is a lot of migrating wood ducks that I did not even know that kind of thing happened until we experienced like getting hit in the face with ducks one morning. And it was because this Arkansas Game and Fish game warden told us that the what was it? It was the white oaks.
Yeah, it was an acorn.
It was some kind of 10-year push on the, where they really release a ton of acorns, and somehow the wood ducks just know it. And we were getting, literally Tristan almost got hit in the head. We all shot one, and on the way to get our one, we limited it out. It was that crazy. And do you guys tag any wood ducks, and have you seen like any kind of big migratory pushes with the wood ducks?
No, we haven't done anything with wood ducks. There's one lab out in Illinois that has put them on, but it's a little difficult, right? So most of the research that's going to be done when you're putting any type of markers on an animal, you're typically going to like focus on the females. They're driving the population. You're interested in where they're going, where they're nesting. Well, now you're talking about a duck that gets in and out of a cavity. When you put something on their back, that's a little funky to begin with, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get them caught. The second part is if you're talking about a solar panel, well, now they're in a cavity for like a very long time, so that battery dies.
Wow.
So
there's
been discussions about putting them on, but it's far infrequent. Now we do know just based on banding data that the further north wood duck basically breeds, the more likely it's going to be a long distance migrator. So it's actually going to do a full on migration. And then you go more and more further south and they go into like short distance migrators. Those are going to go like 100, 200 miles. And then you just have your resident ducks or resident wood ducks. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep. Now, when are you guys going to start injecting pellets? I mean, now I'm thinking, now I'm really like, I want to AirPod my duck. No, I'm getting off track. But the point is, you would think that as technology is going to continue to go, we're already putting those to track our animals that we own, right?
Yeah.
Is that something that is
like a pinging, like, ping your animal. Where's your animal at?
Yeah, that kind
It's
of thing.
not. Listen, if you right now, listen, there's people doing some phenomenal work, but there's something called MOTUS towers, MOTUS, and it's just like that. It's a little tiny sensor that you can attach to an animal. I'm talking, it's so tiny that we can put it on like tiny little birds, like a warbler, like very, very small.
Wow.
And they go live their life. And these towers just constantly are sensing what passes it. And when it passes that tower, it pings and gives it an ID. And now you can like literally, the more towers that go up, the more we know where that animal is. And so now we're tracking everything from the smallest animal to the biggest animal just by doing something like that. It's incredible.
Wow.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
It really is.
So cool. So cool. So how, like, first of all, like, how often does your team go out and these are a lot of graduate students, right? How often do you guys go out and capture and release ducks with transmitters? Yeah.
So the team I'm running right now consists of 3 PhD students, and they 2 are finishing up, 1 is continuing on, and they're out in their quote unquote field season. Usually, they've been starting September 15th. Okay. They spend their first month like doing a lot of like vegetation sampling because we're really interested in habitat management. Sure. And then starting October 15th, we're going to start trapping ducks. Believe it or not, there are migrators down here by October 15th. Now, we will keep going all the way through February 15th. And we'll catch anywhere from, now, this sounds stupid, and I'm going to tell you, we'll usually catch about, let's just say 500 to 1,000 ducks in a year.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, we are working on refuges where there are hundreds of thousands of ducks.
Right.
It shouldn't be hard to catch ducks, but it is. They're very wary. Like, like when I first started this, I was like, you want me to catch like 100 ducks in this place where there's 150,000? I'll throw a rock and I'll get my sample size. No, they know, they're super wary. And so like we're doing trapping opportunistically. Like we put out trail cameras just like you do for deer, and we're like watching, and some days like you got to just time it right. Like, okay, let's trap them. And so we'll do like 15 to 20 trapping events throughout the season and usually get like 20 to 30 each time.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah, I really did think it would be a lot easier. I thought I'd like literally be able to catch thousands and thousands, but they're smart. They know they're being hunted. So like anything that looks a little out of place, like just a trail camera, will push them away.
Wow. What how do you guys like? What are the traps like? What do you like? How do you trap a duck?
Do you guys go running out there
so cool.
with you guys running out there with a cast net, don't you? No, I'm just kidding.
You should. Okay, we've done it. No, seriously. I got a cast net, but we made, so there's something that they use for little birds, and it's called a mist net. It's like a big net that basically the birds are flying and they can't see it and they get caught up in it.
Oh yeah.
And we were looking at this one place and we're like, there must be 40,000 ducks that fly by this one spot. So we made a gigantic mist net by like patching together like hundreds of yards of net, and we put it on like 20 and 30 foot poles to get about 100 feet up in the air. And we're like, this is going to work. Well, it failed miserably.
Wow.
Okay. Well, you try. But the main things we use 3 different things. One is what's called the rocket net. That's how most animals are traditionally caught in our field of work. So basically you put bait out, the animals get on the bait, and you take what are basically these rockets, which have like an explosive charge in them and propel a net forward. And you sit there in a blind, pretty far away, and you wait for the animals to get really close on bait, and then you hit the switch, and boom, rockets go off. You catch your animals. We do that. We do what are called swim-in traps, which is like, it's like a funnel, and the ducks slowly learn to swim in there for food. And then we do something called the confusion trap, which is like usually on dry land, and they walk in and they eat their food and they learn to do the same thing. And then eventually you just like close the trap and they all go in there and can't get out. Those are the 3 ways we do it.
Okay.
Awesome. So how many ducks have been returned this year Because you talked about like a higher number.
Yeah,
So
significantly higher.
talk about why that changed. Because I mean, what you basically said is those ducks that had this safety zone left the safety zone and got into more huntable areas. How many transmitters have been returned from ducks that got shot this season?
Okay. So we're at about 60. And the way to put that is that's about, in any given year, we get about 8%, 8 to 10% of our transmitters killed, give or take. And now we're probably at about 20%. So double.
Wow.
Yeah, significantly higher. Well, and you know, our lowest one was like 4% for what it's worth. So like there's definitely variation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, so we're at about double. And really what was happening is as everything locked up, these ducks were just searching. You look on the GPS tracks, they were in the same area, but they'd be, you know, over here standing on ice, over there standing on ice, and they're just looking for any type of open water. You combine pumps, ice heaters, whatever you want to call it, the river, the Mississippi River, which was unflooded. That's where most of our ducks wound up staying.
Mm-hmm.
They were just so much more likely to be killed. Are we, you know, something you worry about is like, hey, you're putting something on an animal's back, and when.
Do you want coffee that doesn't suck? Get the Duck. Dirty Duck coffee is made specifically for the waterfowl enthusiast. Enjoy flavors like Morning Wood, Dark Dynasty, Cinnamon Teal Snickerdoodle, and First Flight to unlock the flavor that you'll enjoy in the blind for years to come. Our friends at Dirty Duck Coffee Company are now offering all Zero Duck 30 followers a 15% discount when you use code ZeroDuck15 on your next order.
It's that cold. What you're worried about an animal that swims is like that ice builds up on the back of the transmitter and like weighs them down. None of our ducks, there was one duck that had a little bit of ice, but none of the others had any ice at all. Like they were doing just fine. It's just that they were just committing suicide to any place with open water.
Wow.
And there wasn't a hunter, there wasn't open water where a hunter wasn't, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting to think about. I mean, you made another point. I'm not even going to go back to it, but you know, the little things that you have to think about at how you want to track these animals, but you don't want to disturb their potential and their health or anything like that. And something as simple as ice buildup, you know, it could be an ounce or two that makes a difference that could affect their life, and it's good that it's not happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, like literally everyone, you know, we have great rapport with all the hunters out there, hunters up and down the flyway at this point, and we make sure they send us a picture of the duck so you can look at their body, make sure that they look good, make sure in this case that there was no ice anywhere. You want to be cognizant of that. What you're measuring is what you actually think you're measuring. You're not just messing these ducks up. Because when you say a duck doesn't move, you better be able to defend it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You don't want to be creating sick ducks.
Sure. So how many ducks are you guys currently tracking now? I mean, obviously 20% of them are gone, but how many are you guys tracking right now?
About 250.
250. I would be so excited to go to work every day. I mean, it'd be like,
it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's over. We can't keep track. You know, this is one. I've got more data than I can ever make a career out of, and it's like, you know, you look and you're just like, the funnest part of coming to work is actually sitting down with the graduate students and be like, what crazy stuff do we want to answer today? Because we've got the data to answer it. You know, like today we were talking about, like me and my PhD student were talking about, well, how do we look at like fall migration, but not just like migration, but like their strategies, like the idea that like different ducks do different things and where do they go if they're doing these different things. And it's like, I can't believe I get to answer these cool questions and I'll never run out of them. I could stop right now, never collect another single bit of data, and provide new science and informative science for the rest of my career. It's incredible.
What a good problem to have. I mean, I mean, seriously.
Yeah, you're not joking. Yeah.
I mean, to be able to, and that has all been recorded. So even if you need that data of 10 years from now, it's incredible that you can jump back into that. It's
millions and millions and millions of GPS locations. It's millions and millions and millions of behaviors and decisions. And, you know, you can go in now with satellite data. You can take those GPS locations and look on the daily of like what was there given that satellite picture. It's crazy what we can do.
Wow. Brad, I got a business idea, and we're going to be involved in it. All right, because
Pitch it to
there's
me
this,
off air.
Yep, yep. Well, all I'm going to say is a thing called SharkTracker.com. No, I'm just kidding. But so with that said, you recently posted about a mallard that you've been tracking, and it traveled 7,660 miles in the last year. Will you talk about that? Because to me, I don't know how that scales, but to me, that seems like a lot.
Oh, yeah, that one's a pretty extreme example. Most of our ducks probably move in a year like 4,000 miles, 3,000 miles. I think that's pretty reasonable, 4,000 miles or so. This guy just kept going, and what happens is when males go up to breed, like they breed and then they're not really useful, so they keep going, and maybe they do what's called a molt migration, where they're going to lose all their feathers and they want to go to a specific spot that's real safe. And this guy just took off, and he just kept going further and further northwest until he was closer to Alaska than he was North Dakota.
Wow.
And so he just kept going and going, and then he decided, all right, time to start piddling back, and he goes over to Calgary, sits next to like a water treatment plant where it's frozen up. Everything's frozen up in Calgary. He's hanging out like in a park, and this is a wild duck.
Wow.
And then finally gets locked up out of there, and he's in Tennessee now.
Wow.
That's so crazy.
And how long does what's the longest life expectancy that you hope to get out of one of these transmitters?
So we were I was literally just talking about this with my student. I think most of our transmitters last 8 months to a year. And I'm right now, I'm not as excited about that because I really want them to last longer. I would say on average, we're going to get about a year of really good data, like really good data. And then after that, it's going to slowly decrease because the battery, it's a long story, but basically because it's a rechargeable battery, every time it drops down to zero, it loses its potential. So you get if it drops down to zero a bunch of times, like it doesn't recharge enough, it's gone.
Gotcha.
And then so we have some ducks that are giving us 3+ years of data.
Wow.
So so it's cool to watch what a duck does for 3 years and then realize it's the same thing every year.
Goodness. That is incredible stuff. So let's kind of jump back into that. I want to jump back into that cold front a little bit more. So what we know from this conversation so far tonight is that obviously what you guys saw with the transmitters is that a lot of these ducks had to come out of their safe zones to start bouncing around and doing that kind of, yeah. Anything else significant that stood out with you that this weather push, you talked about the 2 pushes. Did you see any change? Are the ducks still hanging around, or what do you see there?
Yeah, so some of our more northern ducks just really pushed further down, and that was the impetus. That's usually that you got to keep in mind, late December. Maybe you guys know this too, just by being out hunting. It always seems that late December, I do pretty good. There's some fresh ducks around, I always think. Yeah. And our data plays that out. There's an inevitable push of either cold weather, usually up really far up north, like the Dakotas. Nowadays the Dakotas, that just finishes it off. It's it locks up a bunch of places, and here they come. Yeah, that happened. So that happened. All the ones that were already down there, which were 75% of our birds, were already further down south than that. They went more east to west than they did north to south.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
The ones we had only 9 out of all the ducks I just told you about that went south. And of those, 4 of them came right back up after the water unfroze. 5 of them stayed down there. And by further down, I mean, one made it as far as northern Louisiana, some stayed in Alabama, but most of them just came right back up anyway. And I will say this, the ones that were further north and came further south didn't go back north again. They just were okay, finally made it to where I need to go. I'm good.
Interesting. So something I'm kind of getting from both of our conversations on these podcasts is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there definitely seems to be some imprinting going on as far as migration goes. So if I'm a Louisiana mallard, I'm part of that Louisiana mallard push, or Is that kind of still open for?
I think it's open, but I think so. I think that's the truth. I think 25% of all of our mallards we have GPS locations in the exact same spot the next year where we trap them. So in other words, 25% of our birds come back to not even the same like general area. I'm talking like right on the same, like where you're standing is where they are next year.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing for a duck that flew 4,000 miles, right?
No kidding.
So
Wow.
when you have that type of fidelity, it's hard not to believe that a Louisiana bird is a Louisiana bird. Now, listen, they're all probably breeding with each other, right? I don't know what makes a Louisiana bird a Louisiana bird.
Sure.
Is it genetics? Is it, hey, I came down here once and it was pretty good,
Right.
I don't know what it is, but it definitely suggests, and we've known for a long time, by the way, that ducks have high side fidelity. Like, we know that. So, like, it adds into an equation of, like, it all plays part of, like, this stale duck stuff, right?
Mhm.
Is that we're, like, the ones that are naive are the ones that we kill, and the ones that are surviving over time keep being the ones that are, like, have higher site fidelity. It makes sense to like know your area, and if you know your area better, you're more likely to survive. So we're kind of pushing that way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like towards we have a lot of birds. If it is that way, then we're, besides like the pressure point, like just hunting as a selective force as a large role to play in why hunt quality for ducks it has gone down over the past 20 years. I don't know if that's true. That's where that's where our lab wants to look.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, and this is just a side-by-side comparison that's coming to my mind. It'd be interesting to understand the science behind what these ducks do if it's similar to what, say, a salmon does.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's magic to everybody that they're like, how do they know to go right back where they hatched, as a salmon,
I think it has to do on the wintering side. On the wintering side, it probably has to do with, habitat quality, wetland quality, and safety. We know that where these ducks are keying in on isn't random place. They're winding up back in the same refuge. That's a safe place, and they know it. That's probably the most valuable part of it is like they know that this place is safe where they winter, and where they winter probably has good food. You put those two together and you're going to increase site fidelity, no doubt. So what do we have around most of the wintering MAV, Mississippi Alluvial Valley? Duck clubs providing very good food surrounding National Refuge. That's probably making a lot of ducks being pretty loyal to an area. Does that make sense year after year?
Yeah, no, it
Absolutely.
makes a lot of sense.
Well, going into, the last, I guess, week of duck season now, less than, and we kind of got into this a little bit on the first podcast, but, Brad, what are some of the strategies that, for people that are new to hunting or whatever it may be that you would suggest just from a scientific standpoint you might want to do as a duck hunter and as just a field duck hunter yourself at this point?
It's like hunting
right.
pressure.
All
and
right.
that stuff.
So this is all right. So most people would say, oh, go realistic with your spreads and this and that. I think different. I think be different. Be different than what they've seen. Don't worry about buying your dozen mallards and putting them out paired up away. No, heck no. Go buy a bunch of cheap goose decoys and put them out 80 yards away from you and sit downwind.
Yep.
That's I hunted 2 days ago. I sat in a little pothole and I didn't put a decoy out. So I just had to be on the X, and
Yeah.
I knew that I know that spot well enough that if I put a single decoy out, they're going to flare off of it.
Wow.
You're hunting ducks that have been heavily hunted, and so go different. Don't go realistic.
Wow. Now, and just out of curiosity, that hunt, did you call it all, or what was your strategy on calling?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't really. So, I did call a little bit, but they weren't. I think this time of year you gotta be real careful calling. Like there's some places I was just in a hunt in Illinois where it was like in order to get their feet down, you literally needed to lay on them. These were still like recently wintering ducks. Like this is like ducks that should know that that's a hunt, but like no, they were on it. Here,
Wow.
yeah, I called. I don't ever use a female duck in any of my decoy spreads. Ducks aren't that smart. Come on.
Yeah.
I give them a lot of credit, but like they're not looking for that hen that's calling.
Right.
And the ducks I don't need to do. If I'm confident enough to not even put out a decoy because I know like this little pothole, if they come in, I'm going to kill them. I'm just going to let them work.
Yeah.
And hopefully scratch out a couple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like I think people. I'm one of those people. And everyone that hunts with me will tell you I overthink everything.
Yeah.
But more and more I'm going towards I want to be different and I want to simplify.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And I mean, hunting with my dad, like he's very OCD and just like gotta be the military in him. And he we change so many different things throughout a hunt. I mean, not, we give birds a few times to try different things, but if it's not working, it's like, all right, well, let's try something else. Let's try not calling. Let's try calling a little bit. Let's move the end of the decoy, whatever it may be, just trying to change it up,
It's too much. Duck hunting is, I was just thinking about this yesterday when I was in the blind.
Our partners at HuntWise are offering an exclusive discount for Zero Duck 30 followers. As an elite member, some of the features you'll immediately gain access to are HuntCast, WindCast, peak kill times, property lines, owner information and phone lookup, 250 map layers, unlimited offline maps, 3D maps, social media, and on top of it all, save up to 50% off some of the top hunting brands in the industry. Download and explore the #1 hunting tool set today and save 20% by using code DUCK30.
It's a very weird thing, right? So you see ducks, and we were working ducks that were coming in. Mm-hmm. And the second, even when they were coming in, it was hard for me not to hit the duck call because it's such a rewarding thing. Like, oh, I'm moving an animal. I'm interacting with it. And like, I am almost positive that like 99% of the time I could kill that duck without a call. Like, wow. I'm not, but I'm, the only thing I think that's like we're tinkering with constantly and is what keeps duck hunting interesting is like how we spread out the decoys. Mojos or no mojos, those are the two things. Always emotion. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you feel the same way, but of all things, like no matter how much research I do, it's like the same fights that I'm constantly fighting with. Like, should I turn on the mojos? Maybe another mojo? No mojos? I have the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the land of confusion.
One thing I'd be interested to talk to our buddies that hunt in Arkansas all the time to see their perspective on this, but I don't think we've really experienced that many stale ducks. I mean, pretty much the birds that were giving us a look, they were callable and they reacted. Mm-hmm. Whether they wanted to be there or not, it's a different story. But a lot of the ones we could call at, they reacted a little bit. And
if they weren't pintails,
yeah. If they weren't,
Are you guys hunting like an open rice field?
Yeah,
open rice.
Do you guys leave your decoys out?
Sometimes, I'd say half the time. It just depends.
Okay, no, I don't have anything to add there. I'm just wondering.
I'll tell you this. This is one thing I will tell you that Tristan and I learned a lot about this year is, down in the South, we get into not hunting an area too much. I've witnessed personally a single field that I don't care how much you hunt it, you will kill ducks every single day, all day long. It was, they shot, and Cade, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll go on the low end. Yeah. 7 days in a row, 88 limits.
I know.
Out of one field.
It was 11 straight days.
11 straight days. Okay. So if you can't look at that and say that ducks aren't jumping around, then I don't know what else that data tells you, because there's no way those are the same ducks, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I know teal are stupid.
Here's the thing.
Don't
yeah, no doubt. Like there are, and I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were in a blind that like you consistently kill ducks no matter what, and it's like how do I put it? There are some places that are just the X, like
Yeah.
they're just the X, and like I'll tell you right now, like ducks are not treating around, but it's a numbers game.
Right.
When you have 1 million ducks, and I
Sure.
tell you that, uh, in any given day, 70% of them are only going to move twice. Once right around shooting light ending and right around shooting light beginning. That still gives you 20% or 200,000 ducks that aren't doing that, right? That are going to trade around once.
Right.
Well, there you go. It's a numbers game because there's so many ducks. And when you think about somewhere like Arkansas, 1 million isn't even touching it, right? And so ducks aren't trading back and forth, but there's so many that some are, and that's how you get that many. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's a numbers game, like you said.
It's all when you're dealing with millions of animals, even if 1% is doing it, it's still a lot of them.
Oh
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
still a lot of animals.
it's a whole lot. And the thing that was cool is that, and it's cool. It was a double-edged sword. Is that Tristan and I got to witness this one field.
No, it's miserable. I would hate that. That sounds terrible.
Oh, it was incredible. But guess what? The next day, everything changed like the flip of a switch. I mean, we shot a few, and we even got to sky blast some snow geese, but it was night and day difference. The ducks weren't moving. Whatever they were doing, they weren't doing what they had been doing the 11 days prior to that.
Hold on. So you were in that blind?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. That's not miserable. That's pretty cool. Okay,
Yeah. No, we was in the blind.
I thought you were watching like over the like you were like looking across to another blind.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh no, you're in that blind. Oh, that's
we're in that blind, and we were. Okay. It was like it's about as fun as duck hunting gets, and they were just every 15 minutes, just here we go, we got something to call at, and and it was a lot of teal, a lot of giant groups of teal. I mean, we saw them from 20 to 300.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I watched. I had to actually go back to the truck and do some work on Sunday morning, and I come back on the side by side, and we always park the side by side, several hundred yards away. And I come walking through there, and I look down. I saw this giant group come over, these guys, and I was like, "Wow!" It was just beautiful to witness, and to see that many birds, and they shot them, But it's go ahead, Tristan.
What I thought was interesting from last weekend is we were there for 3 days. We got Saturday, Sunday, and we took Monday off to hunt. And it was Sunday was the cloudy kind of gross day, and down in the south, like those are kind of preferred hunting days, but for duck movement. But up there in Arkansas, they're like, yeah, bluebird day is north wind, like that's the best hunting days. And we actually had way less success those days, which it wasn't a strong north wind. It might have been northwest 5 miles per hour or something like that. But I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, Cade just told me, he's the owner of Delta Thunder Outfitters. He just told me, he goes, it's just been the opposite this year. Huh. He said, I don't know what it is, but he said, your bluebird days have not been the days we've been shooting them.
Wow.
He goes, it's just not been that way, And, everybody's out there saying, oh, the weather this, and you got your hopes on a whim, that kind of thing, But it was definitely cool that we got to experience. It was going nuts. And the next day we were like, okay, something has changed here, Wow. And it was cool because that it's duck hunting, right? Mm-hmm. Any day that can happen. So, and we do our best to try to explain that to a lot of people out there, especially if you're hunting with an outfitter, is that, look, they don't like have some Jedi mind trick power that pull ducks onto their property. I know a very, very respectable outfitter in Arkansas that they have one of these areas that just, I don't know if it's imprinting or what, but boy, they just smoke them. And last year, it just shut off. It just completely shut off. So you don't know what these animals are going to do. And that's the pleasure of having someone like yourself on this podcast, is so that we can all better understand this stuff a little bit more.
I hear you. Yeah, no, it's the best and worst part of duck hunting, man. You sit there and you go, this thing shouldn't be so smart, and you're constantly thinking of how to trick them. I mean, it's a game of it's constant. It's what makes it better than any type of hunting, I think, is that you don't spend much time actually just like enjoying the actual hunt. It's always like, oh, what can I do? What can we do better? How do we get? It's addicting.
It is. It is. So to kind of shift gears here. So have you guys been finding any dead ducks that you suspect or you've studied and tested that have been affected by this avian influenza?
So yeah, that's a good question. We have been doing surveillance for avian influenza since we started this project. So every duck that we put a transmitter on, we swabbed for avian influenza. Last year we had the first known detections of that high path avian influenza in the Mississippi alluvial valley. So our study was kind of the first detection of it in the MAV. And so we had 9 ducks that we put transmitters on that were infected at that moment. And at the same time, we put 11 out there that weren't infected. So at the same catch, we caught 20 ducks, 9 had it, 11 didn't. We're publishing a paper right now that shows that our ducks acted almost exactly, our ducks that were infected acted almost exactly like the uninfected ducks. So it didn't really seemingly affect their behavior or survival or anything like that, or their migration timing or anything that you look at. And we don't actually, when you go in these refuges, we're not picking up a bunch of sick mallards or green-winged teal or anything like that. Like, we're not finding a lot of dead ducks. Mm-hmm. What we are finding is like a bunch of snow geese that are dead from it. Like, snow geese are getting hit pretty hard.
Are you seeing it more juvenile?
No, that's probably a disease biologist could probably answer that better. But I will just say, like, if you've ever been seen on a refuge, the 30,000, 40,000 snow geese that literally pack, or any field where snow geese are, it's like, yeah, okay, it's not surprising that like disease hits them the hardest.
Sure.
But I will say, it's more of a concern of it's seemingly, I'm not a disease biologist by any means, but seemingly more of a concern of them spreading it to more susceptible animals than, like something like a mallard, actually their population being negatively affected by high path avian influenza.
Gotcha. Like the commercial side and that kind of thing.
Or even, snow geese or whatever it could be, or the thousands of other avian species that, we probably don't hunt and kill. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha. I understood. Yeah, it's been we had a few podcasts back. We had Dr. Jennifer Ballard on.
She's great, from Arkansas. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, and I brought up you on the podcast, and she said that I guess you guys maybe went to school together or worked together or something.
Yeah. Jennifer and I went to school together at the University of Georgia. Mm-hmm. She's amazing.
Really let's go Dogs!
Yeah, go Dogs. That's right. It was a good beginning to my 23. But yeah, she's a gem. You got a good one in Arkansas.
Yeah, she gave our listeners, and us, like a schooling lesson on this whole avian influenza, and good, informative, factual information. They got rid of a little bit of that gossip.
Yeah, no, she's legit.
While we're kind of on that topic, another person that we happen to have on the podcast that I think she also went to school with you is Karen Nitschke. From Georgia, and she was great. She obviously our home state of Georgia is not like the epitome of waterfowl, but the places we hunt are so full of alligators, and then there's some waterfowl. So, and I think her title is the game biologist of waterfowl and alligators. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so we had to complain to her a little bit about our teal season and the fact that we shined out after we get all set up in our blind at 3:00 in the morning, and we shine out and pan. And I go, bro, there is like 80 to 90 sets of eyes looking at us. And Tristan and I wasn't too worried. No joke. And Tristan and I,
Like, are you guys around like Brunswick or something?
Yes.
yeah.
That's not where we live, but if we're hunting in Georgia, it's around that area.
Yeah, it's down there by at Bear Creek,
Yeah. No, that's like I've often thought about, like, one of my dream hunts is to go down to Florida, and weirdly enough, and like, because there's just such variety. There's so many different species of ducks there, wintering down there. But I don't think I could do it. I don't think I can hunt with gators. I mean, everybody does it. Don't get me wrong, but you guys, God bless you. I get afraid of like a snapping turtle. Like, I'm like, even like in December, I'm like, oh, please don't let me step on a snapping turtle. I can imagine going in gator land.
When you do it, you just got to hunt out of a boat and then have somebody else go get the duck.
Well, I kind of honestly, I compare it to a surfer. Quite honestly, I mean, you definitely have a higher risk of dying from a shark, I think, than you do a gator. Because honestly, a lot of the areas that we hunt, unless we're hunting coastal areas where that's not managed, a lot of these areas that are WMAs, they have a quota system for these gators, and they know that they want to take out these big guys, and most of them get taken out. Most of them. But you have your occasional one where you're like, all right, he's bigger than 3 foot. All right, he's bigger than 4 foot. And
I would kind of use the analogy of like, people out in like Colorado or whatever, or I guess kind of where we're from too, the black bears, North Georgia and Tennessee, a lot of people are just like, yeah, respectfully mind your business, but a lot of times they're more afraid of you than you are of them. And I would kind of use that analogy with the alligator. Now you see a lot more alligators, but they, for the most part, are pretty,
Well, the point I was going to make is we told her about this, and she's like, oh, that's great. They're doing awesome. And we're like, no, it's not great. It's not. But yeah, she's balancing.
I'm with you.
But she's looking at it from a way bigger picture than we are, obviously, and cool stuff. But, so is there anything, since we had you on in September, is there anything that, that has influenced new study or anything that, that's came up that you're excited about, that you're like, hey, we're going to start diving into this off?
Right. So we started a new project with TWRA, Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, where we're working to basically work with private landowners to create like private land rest areas for waterfowl up and down the river systems of Tennessee. And the idea is that we'll redistribute the ducks better if we give them more safe areas. So get them off, all these refuges. And it's been just an awesome study. It's what we're using all those drones for, is like to monitor how many ducks are using our rest areas. So we picked areas that like we had no GPS locations of any ducks, hardly ever in these areas. So these weren't like good quality hunting areas. They weren't anything. They're just areas that held water where people would walk through or use it to get to a blind or whatever. And we basically we worked with them to create an undisturbed area that anywhere from like 80 acres or in size to like 200 acres in size. And we have all these GPS marked ducks that we've been monitoring, and it's been just awesome so far. Like, we have thousands and thousands of ducks using these undisturbed areas. Our GPS ducks are using these areas, and what's even better is the hunting in those areas. Like, we hope sees, the data will speak to itself, but it looks promising that the hunting's improving too, which was the main reason to do it.
That's awesome.
Well, that makes total sense. I mean, let's just say you take 100 square miles, right? And in that 100 square miles, you have 2 refuges where the ducks are back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And now you're able to supply 10. They have to travel different lines.
True.
Which is going to open it up to those areas where folks can hunt.
Bingo. So like we were glad it was so, like, we were like, okay, well, we're putting areas in that you can't hunt. And we were like, oh, how are people going to take it? And they've just been like all about it. They're like, this place, our hunting area used to be so good when such and such owned this land and they never hunted, but then they sold it. And now there's a blind there and our hunting's crap. And like, we're like, okay, well, we're going to add something new. And they're like, yes, thank you. So it's been really nice. It's been good.
That makes a lot of sense. That is so cool. That's a very cool
thing. It speaks to the
thing.
importance of these safe areas. Like, if you're not hunting near a safe area, put one in.
Awesome. And you know what I love about what you all are doing there, specifically Tennessee, and the Tennessee duck hunters are going to give a big rah-rah to this, is that y'all are doing something proactive to create better habitat and duck hunting for the duck hunters. But at the same time, what your main focus is helping the ducks, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's a multifaceted approach. And I mean, honestly, I'm glad I get to do the work, but it also speaks to the actual agency I'm working with. You know, they're putting their money where their mouth is. These aren't cheap studies, you know.
Right.
We're talking big money to actually look at this stuff and to implement these type of, like, we're talking about a large scale project, putting up rest areas out across the landscape. That's a huge commitment financially, time wise. That's a bunch.
Yeah.
And like, you know, they're passionate about doing the right thing for their constituents too.
Well,
great.
One thing I will applaud TWRA for doing, and if you're listening out there and you're a public land hunter and you want to get in on some public land, one of the cool things that they do is they will actually publish in their public areas where there is opportunity for either moist soil plants or planted grains and corn and stuff. They'll actually publish, like, this is the WMA. We put in 15 acres of corn, 5 acres of millet, that kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, the forecast doesn't always meet what the growth of the product is. Sure. You know, you might be a hunter going, oh, this 15 acres of corn. And you walk out there and go, like, this was a terrible planting. You know, it's so subject to, they're not farmers out there managing it every day. But the thing that's cool about it is that they're releasing this information to the public for you to see what's happening and hopefully have a better chance.
Yep.
Very cool stuff. So where do you guys have your eyes? Like, where are you looking into the future? Is it this pellet stuff that we talked a little bit about later? Do you guys have some Jedi mind trick stuff that you're doing with ducks?
Most of our studies, we got that big one rolling with the GPS mallards. We're working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to look at how to better monitor different things on their actual refuges. So that's a straight, like, protocols of how to measure things right. And we're working with Dr. Heath Hagee on that. And then the bigger ones down the pipeline are, multi-species approaches, looking maybe about going, looking more at fall migration, the importance of different types of maybe refuges, but also like something as simple as like just quantifying how many days a single duck is hunted. Like, this is a weird thing, but like something like we're thinking more and more about is like a duck that like slowly pulls its way down the flyway versus one that just comes to Tennessee experiences a lot more hunted days.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean from how we manage them? These ducks are getting a ton of pressure if they're trying to go down the flyway over time. We think like 120 days of pressure. That's a ton.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So those are things we're doing and working with other species. Like, we're putting transmitters on black ducks now and trying to see what they do. So far, looking just as boring as a mallard, to be honest with you right now. But we're also doing it. We're doing a similar study in Middle Tennessee on Tennessee National Wildlife Refuge, where we're also putting GPS transmitters on mallards there, seeing what they're doing, seeing which flyway they're using, things like that.
Very cool, Brad. Man, Tristan, you got anything else for this guy? I mean, he just kind of takes that data and at the end of the day, Brad, we all sit here listening to you going, this guy knows something that the average hunter doesn't know. So if you ever need an extra buddy, just give us a call. We're not too far away, all right? Because I'm going to guess that
I'm not saying it doesn't make me anything close to a better hunter. I'll tell you that much. I'm still my own worst enemy in the blind. I'm messing around with decoys and mojos and not actually hunting. Like I said, like 80% of the time, I'm actually like out in the water tinkering with things. So it hasn't helped in that approach.
Sounds like something doesn't it, Tristan?
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier when he stepped away for a second. I was like, yeah, that's about how my dad does it.
It's the military. I mean, there's a reason why my handle is HD Duck Hunter, right?
Yeah, so we call him Brad. I don't think we've ever said this on the podcast, but do you remember those commercials going around with like the HD vision, military vision. See,
Yes.
Used by Navy SEALs. Yeah, all of it.
So one of our buddies, because my dad's so HD or OCD, is like, these are the sunglasses you need, Tony. The HD vision. So that became his nickname about duck hunting.
Well, that's because I walk into Walmart one night, and we're up deer hunting in Middle Georgia, and we walk into there, and we've had a couple, and I walked in there, and they're stacked up like chest high, as seen on TV, and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm deer hunting with these tomorrow, and so I come walking in with them, and these guys are like, dude, come on, there's got to be a limit, so ever since then they've called me high definition, so anyway, but man, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we hope to continue the relationship and have you on. I'd like to have you on in turkey season and talk about what you guys are doing with turkey. And,
anytime.
Yeah, and talk more about that as we roll into the off season, because if you're a true, I can't say label this as a true hunter, but if you're interested in understanding the whole ecology and the whole biology of an animal and what they do throughout the whole season and off season stuff, I think when we're able to talk to folks like Brad and other people that are in the science community, I mean, that's priceless information for us to understand that species better. To understand what they do in the off season is just as important to know what they do during season, in my opinion. But you're talking about an
100%. And these type of conversations, you're actually getting hopefully you see the type of people that are actually doing the research that's informing the decisions that impact you. Like
Yes.
It hopefully pulls back the curtain a little bit, and it's like, okay, we're all the same person, just trying to do it different ways.
Well,
absolutely.
And where can everybody find you guys? Where can we follow you at?
Go on Facebook and just type in Cohen Wildlife Lab. Same with Instagram, COHEN Wildlife Lab. We post a bunch of stuff. We're going to start, teeing up a bunch of turkey stuff now as waterfowl season slows down. But every Monday we post some GPS tracks on Mallard Movement Monday of some cool things we're seeing. And so just trying to keep people in the loop on all the data that we're collecting.
Well, good deal, man. Well, thank you so much, Brad. This was awesome talk. And yeah, that's all I got.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Until next time, good luck out there. Be safe, and good luck with the research and your students.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
I've been southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.